Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parshas Chukat. It in Parashat Sefer Devar and Bar Midbar. In some ways, it's a very short parsha, only 87 pesukim, but there's a lot contained within it. The parsha opens with Hashem telling Moshe one of what is called a chok. There were two types of laws, chok and mishpatim. A chok is a law that one cannot figure out a reason from a human point of view. The other type is mishpat, where one could have some understanding of why the law is. Again, though, we still have to observe all the mitzvahs because Hashem commanded, not because we think we know the reason, because even those mitzvahs that seem a bit more obvious, there's a lot more going on in them. And the chok that's being discussed here is the para adama, the red heifer in English. This is a case where a red heifer, and it has some requirements I'll be discussing shortly, is sacrificed and is then, after being sacrificed outside the camp, is burned to ashes after certain things that mix with it. And the water it's put into water, and that must be sprinkled on any individual who is either in contact with a dead person or was in a house where there was a dead person. There's very technical laws on that. In any event, they had to be sprinkled with that in the third and seventh day after being exposed to such a thing, and then they also have to later bring a korban. Now, the parsha then goes on to describe the death of Miriam, the first of the three of Moshe's family to die, next being Aaron and then Moshe. Miriam, in the merit of Miriam, 40 years, the people that had water had a special well that had fallen around the Sinai, which was a totally waterless area. And when she died, that stopped. That led to a tragic event where Moshe and Aaron were commanded to speak to the rock, and water would pour forth, and Shem would be sanctified. Instead, Moshe, after it didn't come out immediately, some say he misunderstood which rock. In any event, he hit it with a stick twice, and this was not meritorious because he hadn't followed Hashem's command. Hashem then said, on the basis of that, neither you or Aaron will be entering Eretz Israel. Very briefly, there's a couple of questions on it. First of all, why did that deserve such a punishment after Moshe and Aaron have been the faithful leaders for 40 years? And one of the explanations that's given is they weren't being punished for this Avera sin itself. What had happened is they both had previous things. Moshe, at the beginning of Sefer Shmos, after Hashem sends him to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh increases the labor of the Jewish slaves, he said, "Why did you send me? You made things worse," which was showing disrespect and lack of belief, not for somebody at an ordinary level, but at Moshe Rabbeinu's level. And with Aaron, there was still a taint from him participating in the sin of the Egel Zahav, a golden calf. And the parsha then goes on to describe Aaron's passing. Eliezer takes over as the Kohen, his son is the Kohen Gadol. And there is another question. Moshe, some say Moshe was angry. There's many explanations, like the Ohr HaChaim lists 11 of them. But there's in the school of thought based on, among others, the Ohr HaChaim, Ramban, the Kli Yakar, and Sefer Devarim, that in fact Moshe was doing it from his perception to save the Jewish people, because if he had entered as the leader, it would have been a miraculous entry, and if the people later sinned, Hashem could not destroy the temple that was going to be built, because which would be discovered, and the temple by Moshe couldn't have been destroyed, so the Jewish people would have had to be destroyed instead. That's one explanation. Now, taking this one step further, why would still Moshe not follow Hashem? Because not only was he concerned about that, he felt, and why was he concerned about that? Because the Erev Rav, the mixed multitudes, who would cause so much trouble at the time, the Egel Zahav, were in fact, he was worried they were going to cause problems in Eretz Israel. They had lowered the storage status of the Jewish people. But what was the mistake Moshe made? He should have trusted that Hashem was where it is and could have dealt with the Erev Rav in his own way, so that none of those tragic events would have happened. And that's one thing. The Parsha then goes on to discuss the battles with two of the kings, Og and Sihon, the two Canaanite nations in the area of Moab, east of what's now Eretz Israel, and that's where the Parsha ends. Now, what I would like to focus on is the case of the Para Adama. Now, the Para Adama, in this part of my Devar Torah, is based on the teachings of the Maganei Mukot, Rav Shapira from Krakow, Shar HaMitzvahs, and also the Rekanati, a Rishon from the 1300s. In any event, what does the Para Adama mean? And there's some very specific requirements for the Para Adama. And it says that what does it have to be? It has to be a completely red cow. There's only been 8 of them in history. The 9th will be at the time of Mashiach, which is without blemish, and upon which a yoke has not come. Now, why are those requirements necessary? And one explanation is, let's look at the deeper meaning of the Para Adama. The word para in Hebrew is pei resh hey. Now, there are 5 Sophite letters. There are 5 letters in the Hebrew language which come out in a different form if they're at the end of a word rather than the beginning or middle of a word. The gematria of those letters, each letter has a value, totals 280, plus if you take the 5 letters together, you get 285. Now the word para, pei resh hey, also has a gematria of 285. And what's the connection? The connection is that the death ultimately represents evil. How does it represent evil? Because it goes back to the time when Adam and Chava ate from that famous piece of fruit, and that led to the world could have been perfected. Instead, it created all kinds of consequences, which we're still experiencing even today. That is the poison of the snake, which is why every person is required eventually to die. That's the only way that poison from the original snake that tricked Chava and who then tricked Adam into eating from the fruit and bringing death into the world. Now, that being said, so that will also explain a number of things. Why does it have to be all red? Because the Para Adama represents strict din, strict justice. No chesed, because the thing that the snake did, which resulted in mankind struggling for the last number of thousands of years, was too serious. So what did he have to do then? The counter of that was the having something strict judgment, and only with strict judgment could the influence of the exposure to death be switched and made purified. And so therefore, if it even had 2 hairs of another color, those other hairs represented chesed, And since those other hairs represented chesed, it wouldn't be fully strict justice. And that explains that. Now, the question is, why are there 4 requirements? Simple answer is you can say that Hashem created those requirements, but there is something further going on with this, which is that, so what happened? We had Adam and Chava committing the sin. For 20 generations, Hashem gave the entire human race a chance to redeem themselves. What happens is with Noah, instead of that generation doing tshuva, they got so immoral, Hashem had to wash away the whole world, except for the people in the ark and the animals with them. Now, that being the case, we were given another 10 generations with shorter lifespan, and that led to the Migdal Babel, the Tower of Babel, and instead of recognizing Hashem, the nations of the world did the opposite. Therefore, there had to be one nation who was going to lead the world to the great potential and ultimately Mashiach, the end of days, and that was Bnei Israel. Now, that being said, they always had the potential, if they didn't do what they were supposed to, there could be, in effect, 4 exiles. Those are the exiles of Babel, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And what does that have to do with the Paraduma? Because each one of those requirements is, in effect, caused by the 4 Malchus. What are they? Because there had to be a kapora for the rebellion of the people who rebelled in the generation of Moshe, and as Moshe warns in Sefer Chazinu, they're going to rebel even more afterwards. And so how does this work? The Adama represent Malchus Babel, as learned in Sefer Daniel. The Tamima that has to be perfect represents the second exile of Malchus Mada, which is Persia, Media Persia in English. And then it says there isn't a Mum. That's dealing with the Malchus of Yavan. And there also, because what was the evil besides the fact they were trying to oppress us, they were trying to bring false philosophies against us and remove us from the Torah. And finally, it says cannot have been a yoke on the animal. What is that representing? That is representing Esav and Amron, the exile we are in with them. And on a bit of a deeper level, we're also fighting here. There's something called Klipot. After the initial sin was committed by Adam and Chava, many neshumas and sparks of holiness, they're going to make them souls, were trapped in impurity. And because of that impurity, the only way we could deal with that was through the 4 exiles. And that was the counter to the Yetzer Hara, the snake. And as we are nearing the end, we have done virtually all the work that's needed so that we can merit Mashiach. And the Para Adama and this whole saga about it is representative of that. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.